Welcome to Householders, a conversation about American life as Zen practice. I'm Inga Annie Wade.
And I'm Kyosaku John Mitchell, and we're lay members of the Atlanta Soto Zen Center. I've been thinking a lot about my spiritual origin story because we've been talking about sort of our early religious lives and how we came to Zen and all that stuff. And what I have realized is that it obviously goes back even further in my life than just, conscious moments of religious experiences as a teenager or intellectual thoughts about the universe and how it works and what it is and where it comes from and all of that stuff. Because I can remember having thoughts and feelings about that kind of thing as far back as I can remember anything. And along with that, certain perceptual things that just seemed too strange to explain, just like illusions and, visual experiences and dreams and things that were just so bizarre that they shook me out of any kind of sense that the world I lived in was exactly the way it seemed. Like I always knew there was something going on here. And I feel like there were a few key experiences in childhood, not like specific. A lot of people that I've talked to have had moments when they were a child where something strange happened to them and it changed their lives. It's not like I can remember anything like that. I just always remember, playing with perspective of like having one eye open and then switching to the other eye and like seeing how the world looked different and just never really believing what it felt like my senses were supposed to be telling me. And that was where it all began for me, knowing that there was more to this life than it seemed. And I was wondering if that's what it was like for you too.
I mean, absolutely. Children are so perceptive. They kind of have that Zen mind, beginner's mind.
Oh yeah.
We haven't, quite been able to indoctrinate them with all the ways of how we believe the universe works and how you are supposed to perceive things or an explanation for that. So I feel like as a kid, I definitely questioned a lot more things. And, I guess I continued to as an adult, but for sure, I do know what you're talking about.
Are there specific things that you remember from very early ages?
Yeah. So the earliest experience like this I can remember, at least. I'm sure there were more before that, but my uncle liked to tickle me and my brothers.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was fun, but I thought about it one day. I was just thinking, I was probably like 4 years old. And I thought to myself, well, why does someone like, tickling you make you laugh? It's not funny. Like he's not telling you a joke. I couldn't figure out why that would make me laugh. And I was like, okay, well, how about this? Next time someone tickles me, I'm not going to laugh. And guess what, John? I'm not ticklish. That one situation where I decided I didn't actually have to laugh because someone was tickling me made me go through my entire life where I just wasn't ticklish until one day I decided, well, maybe tickling's fun. Maybe it's okay if I laugh when I'm being tickled. Just for funsies.
And what age was that?
This age.
Oh, just recently?
Yeah.
And now you can be tickled again?
I can be tickled again, yeah.
So did this establish some kind of sense that you're in control of your mind and perception or something? Was that like an early Zen experience?
I feel like, yeah, I mean, just me being able to question, something that I experienced, not taking it just at face value and wondering why that thing happened the way it is and experimenting with that. So how about I share one, you share one? Let me hear one of your stories.
Well, the one I always come back to is a dream that I had.
I love dreams.
That really got me on a whole dream thing that lasted for a really long time. I'm talking about it in the past tense because while I would probably still identify as someone who is really into dreams, like I haven't had a great dream in a long time, and I don't really know what that's about. And I mean, of course, for the last couple of years, I haven't really slept
Well,
very
that
much at all.
probably has
And
something to do with it then.
yeah, and like I have no idea what would happen to my brain if I got, like 10 hours of sleep without being woken up. That like
Right.
I don't know what that would do to me anymore.
I'm
Uh,
sorry.
but well, no, it's okay, it's worth it. But also, I'm not even sure that was it. I'm not. It might have kind of died down before then. When I like my early 20s were really the most active and intense dream period of my life, and I was writing them down all the time, and I have all these journals of these crazy dreams. But all of that interest was sparked very young, and I had this dream when I must have been like 5 years old. There are details about the tape that I was listening to when I went to bed that, like, there's circumstances that make me think it was 5 years old, but I kind of can't believe that I remember something that happened when I was five as vividly as I remember this.
Oh, I remember things from when I was very, very young, and I will tell my mom the stories, and
Hmm.
she'll say, "Yeah, you were 2 years old."
Whoa.
So I think we can remember things, just bits and pieces. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, and then this was very existentially significant, this dream. And it had to do with a tape that I listened to when I was falling asleep. My parents, I asked them about this not that long ago because we were trying to figure out what to do with our little kid when there was just one of them, as far as sound, like giving her a good sound environment when she was going to sleep.
Hmm.
And I kind of remember that they had me listening to stuff from very, very early, music and not books, like stories with sound effects and stuff on tape. And I remember like flipping the tape over to the other side myself from a very early age. So there was this theatrical auditory experience in my going to sleep that surely contributed to the kind of vividness and intensity and drama of the dreams I was having. And the dream that I remember was definitely connected to a story on one of these tapes. And it may have been that I was listening to that story when I fell asleep, or it may just have been in my mind when I went to sleep because I listened to it all the time. But the story was a man and a woman. They were scientists, and they were driving into the jungle to look for dinosaurs. And they heard a big dinosaur stomping and roaring in the distance. And they, in the tape, they said, "Let's get out of here." And they drove away, and the dinosaur roars. And that's sort of the end of the scene. But I remember seeing it vividly and kind of realizing, wow, I can see it. Like, it's not just sound now. It's like I can see the jungle, and I can see the scientists, and I can see the Jeep that they're driving in. And then I heard the dinosaur, stomping and roaring in the distance. And I knew how it was going to go, so I didn't get scared. And then the part where they say, "Let's get out of here," didn't happen. And the dinosaur's getting closer and closer. And I saw it. I saw it like crash through the trees and rear its head up and, roar and make this big like dive for the Jeep. And I got terrified and I woke up. And I don't remember if we got eaten or what, but like it definitely woke me up. And I went downstairs to my parents' bedroom and I told them that this happened. And they said, "You had a nightmare. It's okay. Don't worry. Go to sleep." I went back up. I went to sleep and I had the dream again. Exactly the same as the first
It
time.
starts over.
All over again.
Oh no.
And my memory is that it happened like 5 times, like over and over and over and
Oh my
over and over
gosh.
again in this one night.
Did you have a fever?
I don't think I did. Because I interacted with my parents in a pretty normal way. And, like I feel like the story wouldn't have gone the way it had if I had been sick, like they sent me back upstairs and I went back to sleep. I mean, I don't think I went back to them every time. I think I just woke up terrified and went back to sleep the best I could. And then I don't know how well I slept the rest of the night, but I definitely had this sense that my mind, it taught me something about my mind, like I knew
Mm-hmm.
after the third time that this was happening again. I wasn't just having the same experience fresh over and over again. I was like, oh man, it's happening again. And by the end of that experience, I was pretty sure that there's something just truly bizarre about the mind. Not that I had the word mind to apply to what it was. I just knew there was stuff happening in my head that was not real,
Yeah.
but felt real, but also was not really that obviously less real than what was normally happening. Like it gave me some safety and distance from my mind because I knew that I could have the dream about the dinosaur over and over again and it wouldn't ever actually eat me. But I think it also was responsible for me realizing that everything is kind of dreamlike, and that everyday experience has this same surreal quality as this dream had. And I noticed my dreams a lot more ever since then. But I think the effect it had on me while I was awake was just as profound. And I was super young to have that experience, I feel like.
I mean, it sounds kind of scary, honestly. Like, to feel like, oh, I'm gonna go to sleep. I might have this dream again.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I remember being sure I was going to have it again. I thought I was going to have it again every time I went to sleep for the rest of my life, Like it
Yeah.
was what happened when I went to sleep at that point. But obviously that didn't happen, but I think the way it left me, and maybe it's not unusual for kids at that age to have these kinds of experiences of the limits of their psyche and their imagination and all this, Jungian stuff going on. But it definitely left me with the impression that consciousness was weird, and
Consciousness is weird.
never recovered from that. It just got weirder and weirder after that.
Yeah. I mean, I also have a very strange relationship with dreams because I am such a vivid dreamer.
Mm.
And sometimes my dreams appear even after I wake up.
Ooh.
So yeah, that only started when I was 19, and I just started like having like these experiences where I'd wake up, but I would still see something from
Mm.
dreamland, but it was like in my room. But maybe that's just another thing, because I don't think that really helped me like come to the conclusion as a child that things were very strange
Mm.
and not as they seemed. But it definitely, as an adult, realizing that I'm still going to experience strange things like that. But as far as dreaming when I was a kid, I think something that was profound for me was when I was very young and I had a lucid dream for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember because a lot of my dreams are overcast, like most of them are
Interesting.
overcast. So that's one clue that I know if it's dreaming. Although, in real life it's overcast a lot too. So it's
Uh-huh.
not always. But yeah, this dream was overcast and I was in my neighborhood and there was a bunch of neighbors I didn't know, but they were all very friendly and I was going to talk to them, and because I realized it was a dream. And I know I was around 5 years old because of the house I lived in the neighborhood I was in.
Yeah.
I told one of the dream people, I said, "Did you know that this was a dream?" And she did not believe me.
And this was like not a real person, not a person that you knew from real
No,
life. Wow.
no. But yeah, after that I'm like, you can control your dreams. And that's kind of like the theme, right? Like, we're realizing as kids that like you have some sort of control over your perception of things.
Yeah, it's weird. It's kind of paradoxical, isn't it? Because it's not, you realize that you have some amount of agency or control as a conscious being, but you also are realizing it because the world you think you live in is kind of unreal. So I think that could be unsettling to some people. I mean, I think
Mm-hmm.
it probably explains a lot about people's materialistic or religious impulses, that they're unsettled by the intangibility or ephemerality of life, and they're clinging to life, however they can, or whether it's life in this world or life in the next world. And that never ever was a problem for me. I mean, there's kind of, we haven't said the word death yet. We may not have said the word death on this podcast yet, for all I can tell. But like there was definitely that layer of it for me. Like death, awareness of death or consciousness of death was definitely intertwined with these feelings from a very early age, with these dreams. And the dinosaur was going to eat us and kill us. Like that was what the dream was about. And it definitely led to more sophisticated sort of fear of death kinds of thought, if not dreams, like thoughts in the middle of the night. I made a list not that long ago that I could actually pull up, of the recurring dreams that I've had all through my life. And none of them are that surprising. None of them are they're probably most people's or most Americans, typical recurring dreams. But have had dreams about nuclear bombs as long as I can remember.
Wow.
I've had dreams about big storms as long as I can remember. And clearly it's all connected to death and awareness of death or awareness of mortality. But the paradox is, it's not like I was becoming terrified to die at that time.
Mm-hmm.
It was much more, well, it was a kind of a beautiful experience. It was a liberating experience to kind of realize that life and death and aliveness itself are not, it's not this, it's not real. It's not all the way real, or like there's no, of course it's real. It's all that, I mean, if real means anything, it means this life that we have. But it wasn't this fine line. It wasn't this clear boundary, and that whatever happened on either side has a little bit of the other side in it. It's not like I never really saw death as this lights out thing that materialist thinkers tend to think of it as. It always seemed like there was something of the world beyond in the world we're in.
Oh.
And that's what the dream, that's why the dreams had such a death flavor, I think. And also why I wasn't scared despite that. People talk about death as a fear that haunts them through their days.
Uh-huh.
Or as something they never want to think about, that they try to block out or keep out of their mind. And so many people, so many people in spiritual scenes, like, not unlike the one that you and I hang out in, so many people in those kinds of scenes make it a thing of theirs, like a campaign of theirs, to be like, don't forget death. Death is the great matter. We have to remember that we're mortal and death is certain, and we're preparing ourselves to die at any time, and that's what our
Yeah.
meditation practice is for, and whatever. And it's never really seemed that hard to do for me. Or maybe to put it another way, death has never been that far from my mind as long as I can remember, because it's always just been obvious to me. And you see it around. You see squirrels and birds, and you see death even on a good day in a prosperous, lucky country. You see death all over the place. And it's just been something I've noticed ever since I was little. And it kind of helps me keep life in perspective. And I'm trying to call back to something I said a few minutes ago about certain kinds of people. Like lots of people have great fear of death, but some people don't. And I feel like that has something to do with why I do the practice that I do now, the practice that we do now. And it's not uncommon in Zen circles for people to say Zazen is practice for death, or Zazen is death. Like, you have to die on the cushion. I think you said those exact words in one of these conversations. And I've always taken that very literally. and seriously, and I also have experienced it, and I've not, and it isn't, it goes away, you know, I come back to life and this body and what have you, but it's always right there for me. And I don't know whether it's a kind of person that I am or a capacity that I've developed through all these experiences that I have to just be able to deal with death. But I want to hear if you connect with any of that, and how death features into these kinds of experiences for you.
Well, I feel like what's scarier to me than death is time passing. So another thing that I did when I was little, and I would do this a lot because it just blew my mind. You know, I would stand there and go, okay, I'm going to take one step. But when I take one step, that will be the future, and that hasn't happened yet. But once I take that step, this moment will then be the past.
Mm-hmm.
And I would do that, and then I would be like, oh, I'm in the future moment. And I'm like, wait, this isn't the future moment. It's now this moment. And I would do that over and over and over again. And
this is exactly what I wanted to talk about. You are such a Buddhist kid. Come on.
Sometimes I take a step and I just feel like 5 years have passed.
Whoa.
And I don't, you know, and that's the thing that I feel like I want to practice is to, you know, not be afraid of the passage of time. And, you know, of course, when we're learning to be in the moment and enjoying every experience as it comes, then we won't have to sit there and be like, you know, now is the present, but then it'll be the future when I step over here. Definitely the death itself. I mean, I think that's going to be so quick. Unless you just think that the passage of time is just you dying until the moment you are actually dead. Then I guess it lasts for a really long time.
You start dying at the beginning, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, but what's the fear? I want to hear more about the fear that you're describing, because what you described to me just now was facing the fear, or really stepping into it, experiencing that passage of time.
When I was younger, I don't think I was afraid of it. In fact, like when you're a kid, it's like kind of exciting. You're like, I'm going to grow up. I'm going to be a grown up. And then you get to do things when you're a grown up.
Yeah. Whatever those are, I can't wait to do them.
You don't get to just, yeah, I know, right? I'm still waiting on that.
Yeah.
You get to meditate at least.
Right.
So I get there. I'm an adult now.
Mm-hmm.
And it just keeps going. That's not the stopping part.
But what, are you scared now? Are you more scared now than you were before about that passage of time? Does it feel like it's getting shorter?
Yeah, like each day is shorter than the last day.
Why are you scared? What are you scared of?
I don't know. I just think that like maybe my illness gets worse or something as time goes on. Like when you get old, you get arthritis, and then you get like, you know, it might get harder and harder as they get older. It's like I'm nearly 30 now, and I feel like this is probably the best I'm ever going to feel. And that's still a lot of pain.
Well, I'm over 30. And I'll tell you, I have started to hurt myself in really interesting ways recently. And that is kind of upsetting. But, well, the thing you described about taking one step and feeling like 5 years have passed, that usually feels like a good feeling to me.
Really? Please explain more.
And it's because I feel like I have all the time in the world if one step can last that long. And maybe I'm talking about a different feeling from what you're talking about. Like because I can imagine that feeling like the time disappeared, like you lost the time in that step. Is that what you mean when you say 5 years have passed? Like,
well,
oh God, what happened?
They're just like going a lot faster than I hope that they would.
Mm-hmm. Well, because I have these moments. It happens a lot in Kinhin and walking meditation, where I will feel like, I'll sit in Zazen, and the time, I'll know exactly the amount of time that I'm going to be sitting. So there's always this consciousness of like, this interval of time is 50 minutes long.
Mm-hmm.
And that can feel like such a long time.
It can.
Right. And so there is a feeling in sitting where I'm like, this feels like an eternity, but it's only 50 minutes. And I just need to hang in there because I know I'm not going to like die of thirst sitting here. Like it's less than 1 hour. So just hang in there. And then I move into walking, and just that bare amount of movement, even though the steps are very slow and very long, but moving so much more than I was moving before, it feels like so much is happening. And the amount of time I'm doing that for is only 10 minutes. But it feels like, because of the contrast, I guess,
Yeah.
with the Zazen, so much feels like it's packed into those steps that they feel like these huge expanses of time in a different way, in this sort of liberated way where I can do so much and experience so much, and only one step will have taken place. And I guess it's familiarizing me with that feeling enough to, in moments where I feel like, oh wow, I'm 33, like my kid that was born yesterday is 2 years old and talking now, like, there are these accelerating moments like you're talking about where I can start to get a little bit, where's the time going? But then I realize that the amount of time between me having this thought and me, putting down the glass of water that I'm sipping from while I'm having this thought, like all this stuff is happening.
Yeah.
And I feel relief that that time isn't this fixed quantity from the point of view of experience. It's got so much, it's got as much in it as you can bring to it. So I don't know. Sometimes I also feel like 5 years have passed when I'm taking a step, but then I guess what I realize is it hasn't actually. It feels like 5 years, but really only one moment has passed, and that's a relief.
I mean, there's hope for, to sort of return to that childlike state of mind, if knowing that the perception of time, the way we perceive it, is not necessarily how it is in truth. And that, again, like when you're meditating, it can feel like 1 minute can feel like a very, very long time, especially when I know when the bells is coming. I'm like, I can tell the bell's about to ring.
Yes.
And it should only be like a minute away, but that minute felt probably like, at least 5 minutes.
Yes. That's the worst. When you hear somebody shuffling and you know that the bell's gonna come, but you don't know exactly when. Yeah. Totally.
But maybe I don't really want time to pass like that. Like that sounds a little excruciating. I mean, in my adult years, I'm actually like having more fun, and I'm less afraid in general than I was as a child or a young adult. But it does seem like time is going by a whole lot faster.
You were so perceptive about the subjectivity of time in that description of you as a kid, right? That was a childhood thing of like taking the next step will be in the future type of thing.
Right.
I'm surprised to put that together with the I don't want to burden you with the word anxiety, but like the concern about the passage of time, because I find that to be such a playful scene or description. Like you were playing with time, you were time traveling.
Well, I don't think we're always like necessarily progressing. I think sometimes the things that we thought as a kid in the beginning were the right things, and we somehow lost it within the constraints of society or whatever else we've been taught along the way. And I mean, I think it's the same with Zen. We're trying to return to a state that already is. And in some ways, I'm still that person, but have gained some anxieties along the way.
But When you're on the cushion, though, is the experience that you're having, would it be familiar to yourself as a child? Are you seeing and feeling and going through something that you had already seen?
Yeah.
And that kid that was doing the time traveling and the lucid dreaming, did that kid know this experience in some way already?
Absolutely. 100%.
Because that's like the only thing I'm sure of about this practice, and why it's my practice is that it always has been. And that's what I was getting at with this kinds of people thing. It's just like other people's practices are different from this, but this practice of Zen is something that I did by accident before I even was conscious of doing it, and it's a quality to my life that has always been there. And I mean, I guess I know what you mean. Like, all of the adult struggles of life have built themselves up around this thing that was unburdened when I first did it. It was unburdened with any kind of concern about the future or anybody else, or, you know, even responsibility of any kind. Like, I was completely free to be a kid. And I mean, even that is a privilege. I completely understand that. But like, as the burdens of life have like shifted onto my shoulders, it has become harder to be that kid in a really serious way. But the practice that I do is a practice of protecting that kid.
Yeah.
And strengthening myself around him so that he can stay who he is.
Me too. Sometimes I have to start doing things just to do them, because that's what I did as a kid. I enjoyed doing a lot of things. I wrote a chapter book in 5th grade, you know, just because I wanted to. No one read it.
Yeah.
Actually, I think my friend read it. It was really bad. But I did those things just for fun. You know, I drew all these comic books, spent hours and hours on it. And I did it for money as an adult. I drew a comic book, and it was so hard. And it was so stressful. And I was like, this is not what I was doing as a kid.
Yeah.
And you know, that moment where I was doing the same thing that I was doing as a kid, but doing it for gain, I realized that I need to start doing things because I want to do them, and just for the sake of doing them and nothing else. And that's what I'm always trying to get back to, just that exploration and just, you know, being here, existing.
I couldn't think of a more succinct description of Zazen than the one you just gave.
Yeah, that's why I like it so much, even though in the moment I might not like it so much. Right.
But, you know, there's you with all those burdens, and then there's you, the little kid who's always there, just doing what she wants, drawing comic books or whatever. I mean, this is like the trickiest thing about this no self idea, which is obviously way more complicated than there is no self in Buddhism. Very little Zen text about the self actually talks about the self that way. But it talks about small self and big self. And, you know, small self might be uncomfortable sitting there on the floor, but like big self has always been just being itself.
Oh, I like how our big self was our small self.
Yeah. Yeah, the small self is the grown up. Householders is a production of the Atlanta Soto Zen Center in Atlanta, Georgia, and the Silent Thunder Order. Find us on the web ataszc.org.
Our Sangha depends on your support. You can donate by PayPal to donate at storder.org. Gasho.